Well, hello there. I hope that you're having a great day so far. So we're going to try something a little bit different. So you're going to be obviously watching this video and I'm going to be walking through the notes with you and talking about different things. So the paper that you have in front of you should match what you see on your screen. The fonts may be a little bit different and it may be set up a little bit differently, but it has the same content and that's what's important. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fill in these blanks that we have here. So if we look at this symbol right here, and if we were to match that to our hands, this symbol would match with our left hand. So that tells us that this symbol is a less than. It is a less than. So we're going to go ahead and fill that in our blanks. It's a less than symbol. And I'm really sorry, sometimes from time to time you'll hear a ding like you're about to. I apologize. It's the only way I know how to switch some things on the computer, and I don't quite know how to turn that sound off. So this is a less than symbol, and underneath it down here, we're going to talk about the type of line that we have to graph. I'm sorry, that we have to use when we graph this. When we graph inequalities, the good thing about graphing inequalities is that it's really, really, really similar to graphing lines. There are only two things that are different. The first one is the type of line. So the easiest thing for me to tell you is that if you see this solid line underneath it, like you see right here, then that means your graph is also going to be a solid line. Otherwise, if you don't see it, like on this one here, our less than symbol, then that tells us our line is going to be a dashed line. It's going to be a dashed line. So we're going to do a dashed line. And then I'm also going to go in here and write the word dashed. I'm going to write the word dashed. So again, the easiest way to tell if our line is going to be dashed or solid is to look at this symbol that we have here. Okay, if that symbol's not there, then that means it's dashed. If that symbol is there, then that means it's solid, and we'll talk about that in a second. The second thing that we need to know that makes inequalities different, is the type of shading. And when we shade inequalities, we have one of two options. We either shade inequalities above the line, so on the top half, or we shade inequalities below the line, on the bottom half. And we tell where to shade them based on this word here. If we see the word less, if we see the word, oops, let me undo that real quick. I'm sorry. If we see the word less, then we need to shade everything that is lower. If we see the word less, we are going to shade what is lower. So for our shading, we are going to shade down. Okay, we're going to shade everything that's below. You may want to write the word below in there. Okay. All right, our next inequality symbol, this one right here, would be the symbol that we would make with our right hand, and it would make this particular symbol a greater than. This would be a greater than. Again, when we start talking about our type of line, we're looking for this line underneath here. We don't see this line underneath our greater than symbol, so that tells us that our line is going to be dashed. And again, I'm going to write that in there. Dashed. Okay. And we talked a second ago about our shading, that we're either going to shade up or we're going to shade down. It depends on the word. So if we look at our word greater, things that are greater are things that are higher. So we're going to shade above when we have a greater than symbol. We're going to shade above when we have a greater than symbol. All right, moving on to our next symbol. We've already talked about this first part of it. This part here makes it a less than. And then this part down here, which we have colored in red and green, this part down here makes it an or equal to. So this symbol is called a less than or equal to. A less than or equal to. If we see this symbol and it has this line underneath it like this one does, that tells us that just like this line is solid underneath here, just like this line is solid, then our line on our graph is going to be solid. You can imagine this as a solid line. That may help you a little bit. You can imagine this as a solid line. So our line on our graph is also going to be a solid line. I'm going to write the word solid in here. I'm going to write the word solid. And because it is a less than, right over here, if you'll remember, tells us to shade below. We're going to shade below. Oops, let me do that in a different color. I'm going to do that again in red. So we're going to shade below. Okay. And then we have our last symbol over here, and we're almost done. And I think you guys can probably figure out that this one over here is going to be a greater than or equal to. It is a greater than or equal to. Greater than or equal to. And just like in this one over here, because there is a solid line underneath it, that tells us our graph is going to also have a solid line. It's going to have a solid line. And the final thing is our shading. If we look at this word says greater, and things that are greater are things that are higher. So we're going to be shading above. We're going to be shading above. Okay. You're going to need all four of these things to help you out with today, but this will kind of be your guide that you can constantly go back to that will tell you how to shade everything and what types of lines to draw. So further down on your paper, it has these words: first, second, oh, not three, sorry, first, second, third, and fourth. And what we are going to do is we're going to talk about the steps to graphing an inequality. And as I said earlier, graphing an inequality and graphing an equation are very similar. So those steps are really going to be the same. So the first thing that we're going to do when we graph an inequality is the exact same thing we did when we graphed an equation. And that was that we plot the y-intercept. The first thing we're going to do is plot the y-intercept. Okay, we're going to plot our y-intercept. Same thing we do when we were graphing our lines. The second thing we're going to do, same thing as when we graphed our lines, is we're going to use our slope. We're going to use our slope to find other points. We're going to use our slope to find other points. If at any point in time, by the way, you feel like I'm going too fast, the good thing is you can hit the pause button and you can pause it and finish writing what you need to write and then hit play again. Okay, the third and the fourth thing are going to be a little bit different for inequalities than they were for equations. The third step is still that we're going to draw our line, but we need to make sure that we draw. Oops, I'm going to do this one in black. We need to make sure that we draw Ah, sorry about that. We need to make sure that we draw the correct line. Okay, we need to draw the correct line, which is going back to our dashed and solids. Okay, it's going back to our dashed and solids. And the fourth thing that we do when we do our graph our inequalities, the fourth thing is we are going to shade. Okay, our fourth step and our last step is always to shade. All right, so we have some examples we're going to do, and these examples on my screen should be the exact same as the examples on your screen. And you'll see over here, it tells you step by step what to do. Again, if you need to pause it, then go ahead. So it says the first thing I need to do every time is label the y-intercept. My y-intercept is always the number that is by itself. In this case, it is plus 2. So I'm going to go up to plus 2. Now I'm going to put a point there. That's my y-intercept, and that was our first step. Our second step is we need to use our slope to find other points on the line. Well, my slope is what's attached to x, but it's just a 3 right now. I need to make that into a fraction, so I'm going to put 3 over 1. And if we talk about 3 over 1, and we talk about directionally, since my 3 is positive, that tells me to go up. Since my 1 is positive, that tells me to go right. So I'm going to start from my y-intercept, and I'm going to go up 3, and I'm going to go right 1 and put another point there. Then I'm going to go up 3 and right 1 again. Okay, I'm out of space, but I'll need more points. So instead of going up and right, I can also go down and left. I can go down and left. So I'm going to go down 3 and left 1, and down 3 and left 1. Oops, that wasn't down 3, that was only down 2. So I'm going to erase that point. Try that again. I go down 3 and left 1, and down 3 and left 1, and then one more time, down 3 and left 1. And that gave me all the points that I needed. So my third step we said was to draw the appropriate line. And we said before that in order to figure out what kind of line we needed to draw, we need to look at this symbol. Because it has this solid line underneath it, that tells me that when I graph, I also need to have a solid line. So I'm actually going to pick up this line here because I know that I can't draw a straight line. And I'm going to adjust this line so that it fits all these points. There we go. There is my solid line. And the last thing I'm going to do is I need to figure out which way to shade. In order to figure out which way to shade, I look at my symbol. And my symbol here is a greater than. And things that are greater are things that are higher. So I want to shade everything that's higher than this line. So I'm going to draw some arrows here to tell me which way is higher. And it looks like, if I keep drawing these arrows, it is this whole side over here. So I'm going to shade everything over here. I'm just coloring it in. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be completely filled in. Just a good picture of what it should look like. If you're a big color person, then this is a great job for you because you get to color. Yay! All right, and we have graphed our first inequality. So, wasn't too bad, wasn't anything worse than graphing our equations. So, let's look at the second one, then I'm going to let you try one on your own. So, example 2. I have the inequality, negative 3y is less than or equal to x plus 12. Now, right now, this inequality isn't solved, so I need to go ahead and first of all solve it. So I'm going to move down here and I'm going to rewrite it, and it was negative 3y is less than or equal to x plus 12. Okay, if I'm going to solve this, then the whole point of solving, if you'll remember, we've talked about this time and time again, is to get y by itself. So I'm going to draw my line, label my sides as y, and then my x's and numbers. and you can tell that this -3 is what's out of place. And if I want to get rid of something that's attached to y, then I need to divide. So I'm going to divide everything by -3. Dividing by -3, dividing by -3, and dividing by -3. So these end up canceling, and I am left with y is less than or equal to negative. This becomes 1/3 because there was a 1 here in front of the x, an imaginary 1. So -1/3 x. And then I have a +12 divided by a -3, and that is a -4. So that was going to be my inequality. Y is less than or equal to -1/3 x minus 4. So when I graph that, the first thing I'm going to do, it tells me right here, is to label my y-intercept. That's always the first thing we do. My y-intercept is the number by itself. In this case, it is -4. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is going to be my y-intercept right here. My slope, it tells me, is -1/3. So if we think about the slope of -1/3, the -1 tells me that I need to go down. The +3 tells me I need to go to the right. So I'm going to go down 1 and right 3. I'm going to go down 1 and right 3, and I can continue that pattern. I can also, instead of going down and right, I can go up and left, and that will put me on the exact same graph. And this is what my graph looks like. My inequality sign. Now, I did make a mistake, and I'm sorry, and I don't quite know how to go back and fix the video yet. So there was one thing that I forgot to do, and this is my fault. Right here, I divided by a -3, and hopefully some of you noticed this, that because I was dividing by a -3, and it is a negative, that's where my red flag comes into play that we talked about last time, my little red flag. And instead of this being a less than or equal to, my symbol actually switches directions, and it becomes a y is greater than or equal to. That is going to affect something about our graph, so that's why I had to go back and fix that. So again, I apologize for not catching that the first time. Okay, so we're ready to graph our line right now. In order to figure out which line to draw, we look at our symbol. This symbol was a less than or sorry, greater than or equal to, because it's the equal to part. That's what tells us that our line is going to be this solid line right here. So I'm going to pick up this line. You can draw a solid line on your own. I can't with this, so I'm going to adjust mine to fit on my points. So my line would look roughly like this. And the last thing that we do is we have to do our shading. And because it is a greater than symbol, greater than means, again, that I'm going to shade up. So if you're not sure which way up is, then you can draw arrows from your points that you already have on your graph, and that will show you which direction is up. And it is all of this up here, so we're going to color this in. This is our shading. Okay, I want you to try number 3 on your own. Go. And you will also need to pause this video. So you should have graphed example 3, and when you did that, it should have looked like this. So we looked at our slope was 2/1. Our inequality symbol was a less than or equal to, so this equal to part told us that our line was solid. The less than told us to shade down, and you can see the arrows that I drew from here. So we are going to look we're going to skip example 4, and we're going to move on to 5, and then we'll be done. So example 5 says x is greater than 5. We talked last time about what to do if it just had an x in there. And if we said it just had an x in the equation, that we just needed to graph that point on the x-axis, and that's it. So I know that I'm going to have a point on the x-axis at 5. So I'm going to go over to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and put my point. And in order for me to draw a line that only crosses the x-axis at that point, my line needs to be a vertical line. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my vertical line right now. And it would look like this. Oh, nope. Wait, what's wrong with that? What is wrong is that this line should be a dashed line. This line should be dashed. That was my fault. Sorry about that. So we're going to fix that really quickly. So I'm going to draw a dashed line here. And the reason I'm drawing a dashed line is because there is no equal to sign underneath here. So if there was an equal to sign, it would be solid. There is not one, so it is dashed. And then now the only problem is with inequalities, I'm supposed to shade up or down. Well, clearly there is no up or down. There is only a left and a right. So we have to use some common sense. It says x is greater than. So do you think greater than is things that are going to go to the right or to the left? If you thought that things that are going to go to the right, then you were correct. So we're going to shade everything over here on the right side. And that would be our inequality. So now that you've done example 5, if you want to go ahead and do example 3 and example 6, example 4 and example 6, you can do that and call me over and I will come check them for you. And then you were also sent a link in your email that had some practice problems for you to do online, so you're going to do those. And then once you finish that, then I've already told you what you need to do after that, so you'll get started on your homework. So have a great day.